Welcome to Mount Holyoke. We're very glad that you're here. My name is Marwa Mikati, and I'm the president of the Student Government Association here. And now, it is my pleasure to introduce President Stevens. Sonia Stevens has been the acting president of Mount Holyoke since July 1st, 2016. This year, we have been able to see President Stevens respond to major national and international challenges while keeping the mission of the college in mind and our interests at heart. She has prioritized being available to the community in addition to her various initiatives on campus. As president, she presides over key campus initiatives, such as the development and implementation of the Plan for Mount Holyoke 2021, the New England Association of Schools and Colleges reaccreditation process, and she facilitates master planning and the new community center. She joined Mount Holyoke in 2013 as vice president for academic affairs and dean of faculty. As the chief academic officer, she was responsible for faculty research and curricular support, faculty governance, and academic budgeting and infrastructure. Before coming to Mount Holyoke, President Stevens was at Indiana University, Bloomington for 7 years, where she served as the university's first vice provost for undergraduate education and as chair of the Department of French and Italian. Please allow me to present President Stevens.
Thank you, Marwa. Good evening, everyone. It's my very great pleasure to welcome you here this evening as Senator Elizabeth Warren discusses her new book, This Fight is Our Fight, The Battle to Save America's Middle Class. We're honored to have so many friends and neighbors from South Hadley and Western Massachusetts with us in Chapin Auditorium, and to be partners with the Odyssey Bookshop in hosting this event. And we're honored to have with us this exceptional woman leader. Before formally introducing her to you, I want to take a moment to connect Elizabeth Warren's presence here on our campus with women's leadership and with Mount Holyoke in particular. Mount Holyoke is an institution that has produced more than its fair share of political leaders since its founding. And so many of us at Mount Holyoke look at today's leaders through the lens of some of these extraordinary women who've been and continue to be part of our community and of the political landscape. Of course, first among these figures was Frances Perkins, a woman who set in motion many of the policies and initiatives that Senator Warren continues to advocate for today. For those of you who may not know Frances Perkins, she graduated from Mount Holyoke in 1902 and was the first woman to serve as a cabinet secretary. As Secretary of Labor under Franklin D. Roosevelt, she spearheaded New Deal initiatives such as Social Security, the minimum wage, unemployment insurance, and prohibitions against child labor, which helped bring the United States out of the Great Depression and change the lives of everyday Americans. In fact, in her new book, Elizabeth Warren discusses the importance of the New Deal in creating the American middle class. If Frances Perkins were here with us this evening, I believe she'd be proud of the progress that American women and women around the world have made in entering public service and in attaining elected office at almost all levels. A success exemplified by our distinguished guest. Women's full participation in government, in politics, in every other sector is essential if we're to address the challenges we're facing in our communities, both locally and globally. Frances Perkins might also be dismayed, I think, to see the economic pressures that so many working and middle-class Americans are facing today, the ever-widening income gap between wealthy and less wealthy citizens, and the continuing inability of the nation to successfully address persistent issues like poverty, unemployment, racism, sexism, and environmental degradation. Here at Mount Holyoke, we believe that we're doing our part to engage with these complex issues. We're extremely proud of our legacy, of the education we continue to provide, and of the Weissman Center for Leadership, through which we offer the Leadership and Public Service Program. Hundreds of Mount Holyoke students have participated in internships, conferences, and programs which both expose them to and encourage them to commit to careers in public service. In fact, we're delighted to work closely with Senator Warren's Springfield office to send Mount Holyoke students there as interns on a regular basis. On a recent visit to DC for an event focused on careers in public service, I was delighted to see one such former intern, Known to many of you as a previous president of the Student Government Association here, Courtney Brunson, class of 2016, now works in Senator Warren's DC office. There is, we'd like to think, something of Frances Perkins in the fighting spirit Senator Warren exemplifies, and about which she writes. A spirit animated by the impulse to use both the power of her office and the power of her voice as an author to keep alive this nation's promise of opportunity for hardworking people. So without further delay, please let me introduce you to our distinguished speaker. Elizabeth Warren is one of the nation's most influential progressives, a longtime champion of working families and of the middle class, and the senior senator from Massachusetts. In the aftermath of the 2008 financial crisis, Senator Warren served as chair of the Congressional Oversight Panel for the Troubled Asset Relief Program, or TARP. Her efforts to protect taxpayers, hold Wall Street accountable, and ensure tough oversight of the Bush and Obama administrations won praise from both sides of the aisle. Recognized as one of the nation's top experts on bankruptcy and the financial pressures facing working families, Senator Warren is widely credited for the original thinking, political courage, and the relentless persistence that led to the creation of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, the CFPB. Today, as a US Senator, Warren is a member of the Senate Committees on Banking, Housing and Urban Affairs, Health, Education, Labor and Pensions, Armed Services, and the Special Committee on Aging. A former Harvard Law professor, she's the author of 10 previous books, including A Fighting Chance, a national bestseller that received widespread critical acclaim. Her new book, This Fight Is Our Fight, is her 11th. The mother of 2 and grandmother of 3, she lives in Cambridge, Massachusetts with her husband, Bruce Mann. We commend Senator Warren on her distinguished career as an academic, as a writer, as a reformer, and as a senator fighting for ideals that many see as essential to the American spirit. We celebrate her as a leader who serves as an example to women around the world to get involved in public life, to run for office, and to persist in speaking out when others would have us be silent. Senator Warren, I believe I speak on behalf of all those gathered here and on behalf of the entire Mount Holyoke community when I congratulate you on your success, thank you for your courage, and welcome you to our campus. Please join me in welcoming Elizabeth Warren.
Whoa, we got a whistler in here. That's great. That's great. Thank you very much, President Stevens, for the very warm introduction and the very warm welcome to Mount Holyoke. Hello, Mount Holyoke. I loved the part of the introduction that talked about Frances Perkins. Every day, from the place where I stay when I'm in Washington to the Capitol, I drive by the Frances Perkins building, which is the Labor Department, and I always look up and say, we're going to do it today, Frances. That's how it's got to be. So I thought what I'd do tonight is I thought I'd read to you a little bit from the book and tell you a little bit about it, and then we'll take as many questions as we've got time for, and if anybody wants to do a selfie afterwards, we'll just lie and do some selfie. That's fine. That's fine. Okay. So, people often drop by our office in Washington. We get visits from folks who are in town from Massachusetts for a convention or a business trip or vacation. School groups and families on spring break come by. Some people come by to talk about a particular issue they care deeply about. The oceans, human trafficking, music education. Some people just want to say hello and stick a pin in the Massachusetts map next to their hometown. And when I can, I have an open house. Visitors form a sort of rough line. We shake hands, and they tell me a little bit about their issues or about themselves. And we usually take a picture together, and yes, we have done some killer selfies. Now, at one of these gatherings, a nice couple stood first in line holding hands. The guy was sturdy, about my height, with close-cropped salt and pepper hair. As I stretched out my hand, his face lit up with a broad smile. He wore a dark suit and a nice purple shirt and tie, but what caught me were his eyes, bright and engaged and completely locked on mine. "Hi, Senator," he began. "I'm Mike from Douglas, Massachusetts, and I have Alzheimer's. Early onset. I'm 55. Soon, I will have forgotten this conversation. I will have forgotten everything. You, my children, my wife." His wife stood quietly as he paused, searching for words. Finally, he said, "Everything I know will be taken from me." And that was all it took. My eyes filled with tears, and I held my breath. How does anyone deal with that future? For an instant, the faces of those I loved flitted across my mind. My grandchildren, my husband Bruce, my brothers, all those who had already died. Daddy, Mother, Aunt Bee, our beloved dog Otis. Who would I be if I forgot them? Before I could recover enough to speak, Mike bounded on. "I will have forgotten, so I'm here today while I can remember. I'm here to ask you to fight for more funding for research on Alzheimer's. Please, I'm going to forget, so I need you to remember." Now, I had walked into that room with my mind on some annoying paperwork, and I was already thinking ahead to my next meeting. And Mike stopped me cold. His story was like a spear thrust between my ribs, reminding me that everything we do in Washington matters to real people, people who never plan to ask for help, but who need it right now. Alzheimer's disease offers the perfect example of how foolish it is to shortchange investments in research. In 2016 alone, Americans spent $236 billion caring for people with Alzheimer's. That's $236 billion just for care. All that money didn't delay the advance of the illness by a single day. And we will keep on spending these astronomical sums year after year. In fact, the amount we spend will continue to grow so much that by 2050, Alzheimer's alone could bankrupt Medicare. We know that this financial tsunami is coming, and we've still got time to do something about it. So how much does NIH allocate to Alzheimer's research? Well, in 2016, the amount spent on research was less than 0.5% of the amount spent on care. The NIH isn't stupid or heartless. It just doesn't have enough money. Even as the population ages and the number of diagnoses increases, Congress continues to cut research dollars. Medical research at NIH now receives 20% less funding than just 10 years ago. And Alzheimer's isn't the only medical concern. Think about the other diseases on the cusp of scientific breakthrough, like diabetes, heart disease, breast cancer, and HIV. Think about kids with life-threatening allergies or autism. Think about people with ALS trapped in a non-responsive body until they suffocate. Think about people addicted to opioids and people in chronic pain. Think about how a single medical breakthrough could give new life to hundreds of thousands of people. Yeah, I get worked up over this, but the way I figure it, we should all get worked up. And it isn't just medical research. If our government had spent the same proportion of its 2016 budget on research that we spent back in the 1960s, we would have devoted an extra $162 billion to research in just a single year. That would more than quintuple the research budget for the National Institutes of Health and the National Science Foundation combined. 5 times the funding. Think of the additional scientists and the additional laboratories that would have been working to solve problems. Can you imagine how much further along we would be on clean energy development, or on disease-resistant crops, or on cheap ways to turn seawater into fresh drinking water? And if we made progress just on those 3 fronts alone, think how much money we could save and how much better off our people and our planet would be. Today, only 2 out of every 11 research proposals that are finalists for research grants at the National Institutes of Health get funding. The NIH is leaving good science on the table because it is chronically short of money. 1 in 5 biochemistry research scientists in America admit that they are considering leaving the United States so they can continue their work. It is not an exaggeration to say that an entire generation of young researchers is threatened with extinction or exile. Some of the work may migrate to another country, but much of the research that is desperately needed simply doesn't get done. I asked the director of the National Institutes of Mental Health what he could do with more funding, and he described how we are on the cusp of a revolution. He and other scientists believe that researchers are right on the edge of unraveling the most important puzzles about the brain. They believe that we are inches away from opening exciting new lines of treatment for mental illness, for Alzheimer's, for autism, for Parkinson's disease, for Huntington's disease, for psychosis, and for schizophrenia. But there is a catch. Without government funding, those discoveries will be delayed by years, maybe decades. For me, this fight is about building a future. And this fight is also about remembering Mike from Douglas, Massachusetts, because Mike is starting to have trouble remembering his wife and children. So I want to add 2 points to that. The first one is that the hero of this particular story, Mike, is here with us tonight. Thanks for being with us, Mike. Mike is in this fight. The second thing I want to note is that 4 weeks ago, President Trump proposed a massive $5.8 billion cut to NIH, would take away nearly 20% more of the NIH's already underfunded budget. Okay, so that's what this book is about. This book is about people. It's about Mike. It's about Gina. Gina, who has a college diploma, got married, her husband works as a roofer. They have 2 sons that are nearly grown. For many years, had an income right in the middle. Gina now works at Walmart. She works uneven hours. Their income has been cut by more than half. And when I asked Gina about whether or not, if she still feels that she is middle class, Gina told me, I don't think there is a middle class in America anymore. If there was, I wouldn't have to go to the food pantry by the end of the month. This book is about Kai. Kai's somebody who headed off to college with great dreams and a real plan, headed into the computer field. Like me, Kai grew up in a family whose neither of her parents had gone to college, so she was kind of on her own trying to figure it out. Kai got her feet tangled up with a for-profit college. And my story picks up when Kai is 27 years old. She has no diploma. She has $100,000 in student loan debt and is working as a waitress. And here's the part that's the real crusher. The United States government is making a profit off Kai's student loans. The story is about Mike, another Mike, Mike from Chicago, who lost first his job in 2008 crash and then lost his home. And what that meant to him. He describes that crash of 2008 that for so many is just in the rearview mirror now, as it broke my heart. So it's a book about stories, but it's also a book that tells a long narrative arc. And for a minute, I want to talk to you about the numbers in the book. I promise I won't overdo on a Friday night. But I actually think that facts are important. Not those alternative facts. Washington. You know, really, I have to say, I never thought fact was a noun that I was going to have to start learning adjectives for, like really facty, factish facts, you know, amazing. But here's the story that I want to talk to you about. I want to talk about America, and I want to talk about our economy. And let's start it in 1935. We're starting to come out of the Great Depression. And I'm going to bring it all the way to 2016. So 1935 to 2016, here's the first fact you just want to get. Basically, GDP, gross domestic product, you know, how much we produce every year. Our wealth just keeps going up. And there's some exceptions, you know, there's some dips here and there a little bit, but basically it's just a line that just keeps going up. Okay, that's it. I'm going to divide this, though, into two time periods, 1935 to 1980, and then 1980 to the present, because it's two very different times in America. 1935 to 1980, America works on building opportunity. It's often described as building a middle class. And what America does in this time period is they do two things. The first is there's more regulation. I know some people think that is a really dirty word. You can say poop, but you can't say regulation, right? They work on regulation. More antitrust enforcement, so big corporations don't get to run over little businesses as they're getting started. There's a cop on the beat on Wall Street, the SEC. The banks are more carefully regulated. That's part one. And part two is progressive taxation. So more taxes for those at the top. And the key, though, is what we did with the money. What we did with the money is we invested in opportunity. So everything got filtered toward whether or not it was going to help people kind of in the middle and create opportunities for others to join the middle. GI Bill, right? Education, returning GIs, investments in public education, investments in state universities. We made an investment in education. We made an investment in infrastructure, in roads and bridges, in a national highway transportation system, in power, out in rural areas. We made investments in infrastructure so that every place would have a chance to participate in the economy, a chance for businesses there to grow and flourish. And here's the part that made us so remarkable. We invested in research. We invested in ideas. We didn't know what it would produce, but boy, did we invest in medical research and scientific research and engineering research and behavioral science research. We invested in a giant pipeline of ideas on the notion that that was how we would build a country that was vigorous and full of opportunity. And here's the deal. It worked. It worked. We built the biggest middle class the world had ever known. It worked. And here's how I know it worked. Let me tell you the number about this. Remember that part about GDP? It's producing all that new income year over year over year. The 90% of America, not the top 10%, but the 90%, upper middle class, working poor, poor. The 90% got 70% of all the new income growth in this country. The pie got bigger and everybody got more to eat. Now, we weren't perfect. African Americans were locked solidly at the bottom. From the first time we measured, there is a black-white wealth gap that is way too big. But as a country, we were committed increasingly to the idea of opportunity and expanding that opportunity. And when the civil rights movement hits in the 60s and 70s, we actually shrank the black-white wealth gap by 30%. We weren't where we needed to be, but boy, we were on a road. And then the 1980s hit. Ronald Reagan. Deregulation. Turn the banks loose. Turn Wall Street loose. Fire the cops. And taxes. Cut taxes for those at the top. And what happens when you cut taxes for those at the top? There's less money to invest in education, in basic infrastructure, in research. And that's what we did from the 1980s forward. And here's the deal. We made this country work great for those at the top, just not for everyone else. That shift in investments, it worked too. Remember how I told you GDP kept going right on up? Remember that part? 1980 to 2016, let's look at the 90% again. How did the 90% do? How much of that new income growth did they get? The answer, 0. None. Nothing. Nearly 100% of growth in income in America from 1980 to now has gone to the top 10% in this country. You know, and the black-white wealth gap tripled. And you know, look, there are people who say, well, yeah, but we're spending more on food stamps, on rent subsidies. That's not the point. The point is that opportunity, the chance to get out there and work, the chance to make it for yourself, the chance to make something happen, those opportunities just shrunk up over time. And now here comes the real twist of the knife. None of this was inevitable. It didn't have to be this way. It wasn't like gravity, you know? Gravity, man, it'll get you every time, right? It's true. Tell that to 2-year-olds, you know, trying to learn to walk and, you know, just bang, gravity again, you know? This wasn't gravity. And I'll tell you this, it wasn't technology. It wasn't competition from overseas. Remember, we kept getting richer. The country kept doing better. The difference was who the country worked for. And that is the story I also tell in here. Why the change between the two time periods? I'll tell you exactly why the change. Because a group of CEOs and billionaires got together and spent millions, actually billions of dollars to make Washington work better for themselves. And that is why I am fighting back. back to the book for a couple of paragraphs and talk a little more about this story. We'll bring it to right now. Trump and his team seem to believe that government is the enemy and that poor, beleaguered giant corporations should be turned loose to do whatever they want. Break the economy, poison the water, cut cozy private deals with Russia, refuse to pay people for the hours they work. Trump and his team have the power to destroy much of what is left of America's middle class. They have the power to extinguish the hope that our children, all of our children, will have a chance to grow up and do better than their parents. Now, there's a lot of tough stuff in this book because I am worried. I am worried that Donald Trump will deliver the knockout punch to America's middle class, to opportunity for the whole 90%. And I want to be clear about this. This is not just Trump's, what he says. It's not just his crazy tweets. This is about what Trump does. He has not yet been president for 100 days. Oh. And already, he's just signing off on one law after another. And they're not even making it, most of them, even to headlines, because there's so much other stuff going on. He has already made it easier for corporations to steal workers' paychecks. He's made it easier to hide the information when corporations kill or maim their employees. He's made it easier for investment advisors to cheat retirees. And for me, the Trump Care health plan said it all. Take health care insurance coverage away from 24 million people, drive up the cost for millions more working families. And why? So you can provide a tax break to a handful of millionaires and billionaires. Can you tell me who on God's green earth thought the way we were going to reform healthcare was another tax break for millionaires and billionaires? And yet that's the heart of Look, Trump and his Wall Street buddies are delivering one gut punch after another to working families across this country. And that is why we got to be in this fight. So I'm going to tell you about the conclusion of this book. I'm going to come to near the end of the book, because there is a lot of tough stuff in this book. But the truth is, the book is written out of optimism. Optimism that we can make a difference. So I want to pick up a passage near the end that starts out. I went to see Donald Trump inaugurated. I wanted to see it with my bare eyes. I did. It's burned right in. Man, I think about it every morning. And then I think, what can I do today? So Trump was sworn in on a Friday. My husband Bruce and I flew back to Massachusetts. And on Saturday morning, we got up, and I'm thinking, where are we going to find our army? How are we going to build an army? Because that's what it's going to take. It's going to take an army. We don't have the votes in the House. We don't have the votes in the Senate. They've laid out their agenda. They're coming for us. We've got to have an army. And so I go down to go to the Women's March in Boston. Someone went twice over there. She had both hands up. I'm with you, man. Me too. So let me read to you from the book. By now, we were 8 or 10 blocks from Boston Common, where the march would begin. And that was where I got my first glimpse of our army. The sidewalks were full of people hurrying toward the Common, Women in pink pussy hats, yes. Men pushing strollers, I like that look. Kids laughing and running. I saw a little girl who was riding on her father's shoulders while clutching a hand-lettered sign that read, "I fight like a girl." Me too, sweetie. Me too. As we rounded the corner, I looked out at the massive crowd. There was an ocean of signs, colorful, clever, creative. I want to read you just 4 of them that I had saved. "This is my first protest, but not my last." Yes. Oh, one of my favorites. There was a guy standing there with this old raggy piece of cardboard, and he'd clearly put this thing on it, and it said, "Not usually a sign guy, but geez." Women's rights are not up for grabs. Yeah. And I'll do just one more. "Donald, you ain't seen nasty yet." We weren't fully organized yet, but the power was there, the energy everywhere. On a cold, bright Saturday morning, something special was happening. Every step brought us closer together. Everyone on Boston Common, everyone in Washington, everyone in little towns and big cities across America and around the world. We talked and held signs that pointed to many different paths, but all those paths pointed toward building opportunity, not just for some of our people, but for all of them. And our very act of marching delivered the loudest possible proclamation of our deep down, unshakable belief that we can make democracy work again by insisting that this government work for the people. We are an army filled with optimism and hope and fierce determination. Yes. 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 As I marched in Boston with tens of thousands of others that day, I had no illusions. I knew it would be a hard fight. I knew there would be dark moments. But I knew that we had tens of millions of people with us, and this fight would be our fight. Yeah. Take one of those with me. All right. This is fabulous. So anybody who wants to leave now, you can leave now. It's okay. But if anybody wants to stay and do some questions, are we ready? Are we ready, Marwa? You ready? The lovely Marwa.
Hi, everyone. So how we're going to do it is I'm going to pick up some numbers from here, and if your number is called, we're going to ask that you get one of the mics that will be delivered to you. Thank you.
Okay. Give us some good numbers here, Marwa.
So, first up, we have number 11.
Well, why don't you do 2 or 3 so people can
11, 31, 25, and 109.
Okay. Come on down. 11, 31. Oh, we got somebody.
Good evening.
Hi.
My name's Abby.
Hi, Abby.
I'm from just outside of Portland, Maine.
Good to see you.
My mother is class of 47.
All right.
And my daughter is class of 17. And I am incredibly proud of them both.
You should be. What a great story.
I work as a school psychologist in one of the towns outside of Portland, Maine. This school system currently serves probably 30 different language-based immigrants, from Somalis to Iraqis to Syrians. I work with 6, 7, 9, 10, 11-year-olds. And your message is of hope. And I usually have answers for children. And I know this is not sort of up your alley, and we're not talking about numbers, we're not talking about money, but I really want to give a message of hope to these students. And I'd love to hear what you have to say about that.
That is just a great question. So let me start by saying we have to decide what kind of a people we are and what kind of a country we're going to build going forward. People talk about gridlock in Washington. Gridlock just implies, two people got to the intersection and they're both being jerks and they won't back up at the same time, No. The fight that's going on in Washington right now is truly a fight over who government works for. And that really means a fight, not just over economics, it's a fight over values, about who we see ourselves as and what we value. A budget is not a numbers document. A budget is a values document. When Donald Trump says he wants to cut the National Institutes of Health by nearly 20%, that medical research just doesn't matter, he's telling you about his values. When he says that he wants to zero out the CDBG grants, the ones that go to cities and towns around America that support things like Meals on Wheels, he's telling you about his values. Because I just got to tell you, millionaires and billionaires do not use Meals on Wheels. So it's how we make this country work. So here's what I would say to those children. I would say that America is a very special country. It's not like really any other country on earth, because we built this country from people who are not blood relatives of each other, who don't look like each other, who don't speak the same languages, who aren't the same color, who don't come with all the same ideas. But we built a country out of that. And for our differences, we weren't made weaker. For our differences, we were made stronger. And so when I say to these children, you are not only welcome here, you are loved here. And the rest of us are in this fight because we believe that your fight is our fight and our fight is your fight. That's how we build the America we want to be. Thank you.
Hi, Senator. I'm a member of the class of 2018.
All right!
And I'm from Hopkinton, Massachusetts. So because of where I'm from and the town that I'm in, I end up in sort of a higher wealth distribution of the population of Massachusetts. And I remember when the Affordable Care Act was passed, one of the biggest things that Republicans didn't like is why should I have to pay for someone else's health care? And I was just wondering how you would explain to people why they should use their tax dollars and the money that they earn to sort of help other people and pay for health care and roads and public schools and all of these things that we need tax dollars for.
So it's a really good question. I'm going to give you two answers. The first one is, I actually don't believe it when people ask that question. No, I mean this. I don't mean it like as in incredulity. I mean it as in bull. You're telling me they don't understand how insurance works? Right? Did they pay for car insurance last year, whether they had an accident or not? Did they pay for fire insurance, whether they had an accident or not? Well, one of the things we have figured out in America is we have come to a point, and I believe this is an important shift, that we believe that health care is a basic human right. And that we all pay in as we go along, and I'll be quite blunt. Every one of us secretly hopes we won't need to collect on it. We hope we're the ones who paid in and didn't have to come back. But what we know is that we built the kind of country that if you do have to come and you do need the help, that's what the insurance policy that all of us built is there for. And let me just say on that one, we were talking about Frances Perkins earlier. That is Social Security. We built that one together. It was an astonishing notion that Franklin Roosevelt and the Democrats had back during the Great Depression. They said, we're all going to pitch in some, and it is the insurance plan for all of America, basically, that says no matter how long you live, there's going to be something coming back to you. And some people never collect, and some people collect until they're 117. And God bless, right? But that's the fundamental point. What we got to understand is we can't run a country for the top 10%. The world doesn't, it doesn't create the kind of vibrancy we need. It doesn't create the kind of opportunity. It doesn't create the future. Even for the millionaires and billionaires, what they should understand over time is it's even in their interest to build a robust America. Come on, guys.
Hello, Senator. My name is Sarah. I'm in the class of 2020.
2020!
I'm very nervous, so pardon my...
Oh, you're great, Sarah. You're going to do great here.
So
we'll get you through it.
Okay, thank you. I am in an intro world politics class here, and we talk about issues ranging from national security to the economy, to the environment, to human rights. And honestly, it can get so daunting and overwhelming. And I know this is kind of a broad question, but as individuals, as someone who's in their first year at college, what do you have to say for individuals who want to help change, but are very overwhelmed by everything that's going on?
So let me just start out, Sarah, by saying that it's a lot of Mount Holyoke women who got me elected to the United States Senate. They're showed up, held signs, made phone calls, passed out bumper stickers. And it actually is a big part of what I try to talk about in this book. And so I'm going to try to make 2 points really quick. The first one is, it really does matter when you get engaged. And I really did. I picked the example. You know, I was the one who was inexperienced enough to jump into a Senate race against somebody who had a 65% approval rating, which I still don't have. $10 million in the bank, which I'm working on, and was thought to be a shoo-in for re-election by a whole lot of people. And there were a lot of other people who said, you know, if you'll get in this, I'll be with you. I'll be with you every step of the way. I'll help you. I'll volunteer. I'll show up. People really did. I mean, it was quite amazing. People who just came and who just showed up and said, put me to work, and I will do this. And I say that by way of saying it matters, and we can make change together. The Affordable Care Act, does anybody remember that the Republicans, the House Republicans had voted to repeal Obamacare 60 plus times over the past few years? One day, this is really true, One day I called Joe Kennedy about something else. He's over in Congress on that side. And hi, Joe. I said, what are you doing? He said, oh, we're just over here repealing Obamacare again. That's all it is. He said, it's another day, another repeal. Senate, ready to go, right? Once they got the majority, ready to repeal Obamacare. How many times did Donald Trump say, on day one, right? How many times did Obamacare say, on day one, we will repeal Obamacare, right? Anybody notice day one came and went without repealing Obamacare? If anybody wants to, I'll talk more about health care, but I want to make a point to decide here, and that is, why didn't it happen? By the time it flubbed up 2 weeks ago, Democrats still did not have a blocking position. We didn't have enough votes in the Senate or the House to stop them. What stopped them are you, and people like you across the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. That was my inspirational moment. All right, good, Sarah. We got part one. You're inspired, right? You know that you can make a difference. Let me give you 3 quick tips on how to do it. Okay, first one is join something. Get connected. 2 voices are more than twice as strong as one. 10, more than 10 times more. Join something with 100 people or 1,000 people or 10,000 people or 1,000,000 people. Because we keep each other going when you do that. We keep our issues connected up. We know which fight everyone needs to get focused on right now this week. So the first one is join, right? The second one, recruit. Don't just talk to yourself. Don't just talk to your roommate who already agrees with you. Go find other people. I'm serious about this. Recruit your mom. Recruit your niece, recruit your sister, recruit your nephew, recruit the person standing behind you in line at the grocery store. Recruit people, talk to people. When I say recruit, you don't have to get them signed on the dotted line that minute, but talk to them about an issue that really matters to you. Talk to them about why you care about what's happening in Washington. Pick your issue, be knowledgeable about it, and here's an amazing thing. When you look at people, when you're trying to describe something, you figure out if you've made it clear, and if you haven't, go back and figure out how to make it clearer, how to make it more vivid to someone. But that's the second one, recruit. And the third one is commit. Commit. Commit to do something. Commit to do something every day. A phone call, an email, one conversation with someone who isn't already part of the group. Commit to do something, because here's the thing about advocacy. It's not like at the beginning of the year they pass out a half cup for each of us, and once you've used up your advocacy allocation, you're done. Advocacy is something that you get out there and advocate for what you believe in. You know what? You're ready to advocate a little more. And so's your sister. And so's your mom. And so is everyone else. It spreads, it grows. So make a commitment to do something every day. I'm counting on you, Sarah. Okay.
We have time for one more after this last question, and it will be 121 if you want to line up.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Nancy. My daughter is a sophomore here.
All right.
I'm from Reading, Massachusetts. You already spoke a lot to healthcare, but I have been a nurse practitioner in a community health center in Boston for about 24 years.
Yay!
Our population is always very disproportionate towards the disenfranchised, the lower income folks, and the immigrants, both legal and otherwise. And our concerns are just watching, waiting, fearful about what's going to happen. Our last medical staff meeting has been about what ifs, what are we going to do? We have survived the Balanced Budget Act about 20 years ago, where we almost went bankrupt and we survived. And now we're fearing about the Affordable Care Act being turned over, and what are we going to do, and how are we going to reach our patients? And as far as moving ourselves to become an accountable care organization, as many organizations are trying to do that, how do we continue to work towards that, support our own needs and funds, and encourage people to continue to be in primary care and Affordable Care Act so that we can stop the medical costs from spiraling? You know, how do we continue to work on that? Because as we all know, as income stays steady, the cost of medical care is going through the roof. So, you know, just looking for more practical ways and how to motivate folks. I think you've spoken to a lot of it, but, you know, as we move forward and try to keep good people in these places to take care of the neediest members of our society, how do we keep going? So.
Okay. All right. Great question. So let me start by saying, for a long time now, I have been really proud to be from Massachusetts. I go down to Washington, I am really proud to be from Massachusetts. But part of the reason I am so proud to be from Massachusetts is that we have built community health in Massachusetts and shown the rest of the country how to do it. And it truly is remarkable. And it has been a lot of people on the front lines for a very long time who have made that happen. I am proud of the fact that in 2006, here in Massachusetts, in a bipartisan way, that we tried to go for universal coverage, that we stepped out. Remember, it was called Romney Care to begin with. Boy, those were the days. He doesn't look so bad in retrospect. But it was called Romney Care, 2006. We passed it with Democrats and Republicans. And here was the deal. We adjusted it. We worked on it. We said, okay, we didn't get it right the first time. We've got to do some more. We've got to add to this. We've got to take this part away. We've got to change how we pay for this. And when the Affordable Care Act came along, we said, great. There's going to be new resources coming into Massachusetts, but it's also going to require us to make other adjustments in how we deliver care. But always, 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 most of the folks here in Massachusetts were aiming toward how we get better health outcomes at lower cost. How can we keep driving in that direction? Doesn't mean we've done it, but boy, have we worked in that direction and made some extraordinary progress. So when President Obama decided that he wanted to go with, he was going to make his main issue to work on universal health care, the question was how to do it. And he looked to Massachusetts, he looked to our bipartisan approach to it, and he said, I'm going to take this basically Republican plan, Romney Care, that had come out of a very conservative Republican think tank because it relies so much on private health insurance. And he said, I'm going to build it that way, and then I'm going to take amendments from Republicans, lots of amendments from Republicans. And I'm going to try to build this the way that Republicans want us to do it. And how much Republican support did he get for that? Does anyone remember? Zero. So, instead, they tried 60 plus times to repeal it. That's been the whole mantra, right? They ran against it from before it was even put in place. So here's the deal. I'll be quite blunt. Over the Democratic side, we have been in the defensive crouch all of this time, afraid to open it up and say, here's where we could make it better, here's where we could bring down costs a little bit and get a little more coverage. Because the minute you open that door, it's like, bam, they're going to come through and try to repeal the whole thing, take the legs right out from underneath it. So we stayed in defensive crouch. Then they come along after they have the House, the Senate, and the White House, and they say, we're going to do the whole thing. We're going to repeal the whole thing. And we said, whoa, whoa, whoa. You can't repeal and run. It's what cowards do. You got to repeal and replace. And then that meant they had to explain their health care plan. As President Trump said, yeah, who knew it was really complicated? Okay. But once they explained it and people said, whoa, 24 million people are going to lose health care coverage. Costs are going to go up for working families. So you can give a tax break to a handful of millionaires and billionaires. All of a sudden, a lot of people started saying, no, that's not for me. No, 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 no. And that's when we started seeing the rallies, right, the protests. People showing up at office hours, people making phone calls. I gotta tell you, let's go back to Sarah's question, what matters? Those phone calls? My colleagues in Washington were freaked out. So, what started happening in America is Obamacare, that had been kind of down in the 30s in terms of where people approved of it and thought it was a good thing, started having real conversations in this country. We talked about pre-existing conditions a lot. You remember that? Talked about that? Talked about coverage. And three things happened. First one is the approval ratings for Obamacare moved up, then they moved up some more, and then they moved up some more, and then they moved up some more. That's the first part. Second part, it goes to the question we had earlier about insurance generally. A lot of people whose lives were not obviously touched, wouldn't be one of the 24 million to lose health care coverage, started saying, you know what, that's not okay with me. It's not just my interest, it's the interest of all of us. So we started watching that a little bit. And the third part is America, as a country, started to make the shift to say, health care is a basic human right. So, I know it's tough, I know it's scary, but I gotta tell you, the ground has now shifted. So yeah, we are partly still on defense. The Republicans have come back, I heard it like you did, today, that they want to come back, and Donald Trump says they're beautiful, beautiful health care plan. And he says people love it. Does he know what people he's talking to? He's talking to the Republicans who they couldn't get the votes, would not vote for Trump Care in its first version because it was not ugly enough, not brutal enough to much of America. And he said, oh, man, they're going to love this next version. Whoopee. But here's the deal. I think the debate has now fundamentally changed. And I think, yeah, we're going to be on defense with Trump Care, but I think we're going to be on offense on single payer and a health care system. Make it a great one.
No pressure. I'm actually the daughter of Abby, the woman who asked the first question.
I gotta ask Marwa what's going on with
Completely by chance. I'm very proud of my mom and my grandma. I'm graduating exactly 70 years after my grandma graduated in 1947. And my grandma for their advocacy for me and for future generations of women. And my question is, we kind of, in living at Mount Holyoke, we almost live in a bit of a bubble, and also Massachusetts potentially included. When we all graduate and when we spread ourselves across the country and across the world, how can we more successfully engage in a dialogue with people who don't agree with our values, but not something where we are shouting back and forth like where we are now?
So I'm going to see if I can give you pieces to this. The first one is stay connected to each other. No matter how far away you go, you need your sisters from here at Mount Holyoke. That's part one. Part two is we all have to get better at this. We all have to get better at talking. Now, getting better does not mean agreeing with things you don't agree with. I just want to be blunt. People talk about, oh, but isn't compromise great? Well, depends on what it's over. Right? No, I'm serious. I don't compromise over bigotry. I'm not going to now. Would I compromise over lowering the interest rate on student loans? I want it down at 0. If I could get it down to 3, yes, I would compromise. Come on down, right? But what those say to me is it's less about focused on process. Did we end up yelling at each other, or did we end up, and much more focused on the values, what it is we're trying to accomplish when we're out there in these conversations. And I always feel like on part of this, it helps if we can make it personal. It helps if we can tell a story. It helps if we can explain why we are so passionate about the things we're passionate about. And try to listen to other people about why they're passionate about what they're passionate about. There may be places, I hope there are places, where we can come together. But right now, the way I see it is the best thing you can do is you've got to be willing to stand up and make your voice heard. You may not have to shout, but you've got to make sure you're heard. The only way in a democracy that the government runs for the top 10% and that they keep getting all the wealth and that every rule that gets passed gets run by them first and helps them first and leaves all of the rest of America behind. Is if democracy's not working. It's as if democracy has become just a spectator sport, something that you tune into once every 4 years, more like a sporting event, more like a horse race. The world changed when Donald Trump got elected. But let's be clear, the world changed the day of the Women's March. That's the day that democracy changed. That's the day when a lot of people who said, I've never done this before, came out and said, I care enough about my country. I care enough about all of our kids. I care enough about what happens to America on my watch that I'll get up when it's cold and I'll hold a sign, I'll make a phone call, I'll connect up with some other people, I'll do some things that are uncomfortable because it really does matter to me. And so it's a perfect place just to leave you with this thought, because I've been thinking about this a lot lately. I feel like this is a moment when our country is being tested. It's a moment about what kind of a people we are, what kind of a country we're going to build. And the way I think about this is it's like a test of character. And this is what I believe. The character of a country is not the character of its president. The character of a country is the character of its people. And